Hello, good afternoon.
Hi,
Thank you so much.
thank you for inviting me
Yeah,
here.
thank you for sparing the time to come and grace us in this podcast. We're
Pleasure.
all about everything sustainable energy and green initiatives. So, before I start asking you questions, I would like for you to share with our audience about yourself. Who are you? Where are you from? So that we can start.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me to this podcast. My name's Janet Nyamu, a mechanical engineer with 20 years of experience in manufacturing. Having worked with Kenya vehicle manufacturers for a period of 7 years, and then set up the Kibo Africa manufacturing company for the motorbikes that are used by corporates, and then finally worked with Ban for a period of 4 years, doing manufacturing of the Jikokwa stoves. That's Janet. My background is I'm born in a family of 7 girls, and out of the 7 girls, 5 of us are engineers. Reason being that my parents, rather my father, had a hardware. It was quite technical, not learned engineer, but an informal one. I believe he was given a chance, he would have been an engineer, of course, but that didn't come his way. So that's the reason why we ended up being 5 out of 7 being engineers. That's Janet in a nutshell.
Wow, Janet, you are from a family of engineers, from
Yes,
your dad
to
to
my
your siblings
siblings.
to yourself.
Exactly.
And you are the fourth in a family of 7 girls.
Yes, I'm the fourth born out of 7 girls. Two of them pursued teaching, and then the rest of us pursued engineering in various engineering fields, from mechanical to chemical, and some of them are lecturers.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow, we need to be hooked up to this family for inspire's sake. Now, Janet, let me ask you, how did your interest in the space of manufacturing begin? How did you find yourself in this space? Was it stemming from a place where you'd already seen this from home? Your dad was an engineer, your older siblings were engineers. Where did the drive come from? Did you lack variety? What happened?
Um, the biggest mentor in my life
Yeah.
was my dad when I was growing up. He was passionate, very passionate, and about engineering, and he was quite innovative. Because he did his own conversions of, he earned some trucks that were ferrying logs from the forest those years, and he would do his innovations because the technology was not as it is today. So he was quite innovative, and we were growing up. That's the kind of environment that we exposed to. So part of it, like 60% was mentorship from my dad. And then the other 40% came when I started working in the industry, whereby I realized there is a lot that we can do. There's a lot that we can put into the manufacturing, and seeing the gaps within the manufacturing sector. I think that has been quite quite motivating, and there's always been room for bringing up something new within the manufacturing, and there still is a lot to be done, especially by our incoming youth, because apparently when we began, the technology was not as grown
As it is right
as it
now.
is right now.
Yeah.
So the youth have more room and space to make it grow more with the technology and the new apps and all this stuff that is coming up to support them. So it's more exciting now than it was those years because of the growth of technology.
I can only imagine. And I remember from the days I was in high school, engineering has always been perceived to be predominantly a male-infested career and a male-infested industry. So I wanted to inquire, what was the journey like? By the time you're seeing your dad doing engineering, which year was that? And fast forward to your time, what was the journey like? What was the past 10 years like for you?
Um, the early years were not quite exciting because if I remember well, in college I was only a lady in a class of 22 male.
Wow.
So in those years, just to add some spice to it, it wasn't common for ladies to put on trousers. And you can imagine for someone to pursue engineering, you want to
Yeah.
pursue trousers, you want to wear trousers.
Yeah.
So that did not sit so well with my father, who believed that you should put on skirts as a woman.
Wow.
So transitioning to accepting that the lady should be in trousers because you're doing engineering, that was a whole difficult issue. So at start, it wasn't that easy. It wasn't so exciting because there was a mix of, okay, you want to pursue engineering, but at the same time now, you kind of have to behave like the men and
Cautious.
dress like the men, and without the society being judgmental about your dressing and behavioral. Because apparently, when you pursue engineering, you kind of seem to incline towards men's behavior
Yeah.
by default.
Yeah.
So, but nowadays it's the whole story is changing. So you find that ladies engineering and they look really well kept. Those years we tend to be quite rugged. It has been exciting.
It was just the thing at the time.
It was the thing at the time. But then the last 10 years have been quite transitional, whereby you find people embracing women in engineering. At some years back, they have also come up so many organizations like STEM that is supporting youth in manufacturing and youth pursuing engineering. Those are the kind of things that have come lately, and making youth and women specifically embrace engineering.
I remember when I was in school and we would choose the subjects that we wanted to pursue in campus, the teachers would be very, very cautious, and they'd remind us, remember, for you to make it to campus, for you to do a Bachelor of Science in whatever, you have to have a certain point for you to be able to be accepted and admitted. But over time, we've seen the government putting in initiatives to try and consider reducing the entry point for the girls for this STEM course in the respective universities and colleges. Can you say that has played a role in giving women entry into the academia space for STEM?
Absolutely. That is one of the things that the institutions have taken up in reducing the expected grade for entry. Okay, that gives a upper hand for the girl child who could be interested in joining the STEM courses. So that was one of the best initiatives that was not applicable our years. That's the reason you found that you realized that I was a lady, the only female in a class of 22 men, because that was not applicable those years. Yes.
And forgive me for asking this question, but which grade did you score in KCSE? Because if you didn't get the grade subsidy, as I would like to call it, did you get a straight A?
Not really. I didn't get a straight A. I got a B plain. But the requirement for the college entry was mainly the mathematics, physics, like sciences, and I was really good. Actually, I was so poor in English. In languages, I was
you don't say.
I was doing bad. I needed just enough to speak.
Because here's the thing, the common bias is as long as you're a girl, automatically, it's an intrinsic quality. You definitely are good in languages.
No.
In engineering, you will need to read hard English.
Not really.
Okay.
I think as we picked it by genetics that all the 5 engineers in our family did so poor in languages.
Oh, so it was not unique to you?
I just thought I don't want to mention that I didn't finish my set books. I didn't complete reading. It was that bad.
But you really tried. Of importance is you finished it.
I tried. I answered all the questions.
Okay, cool. Now let's talk about a bit of your work. So I know you've had a very insightful career that has, ups and downs. You found yourself in the e-mobility space, in the manufacturing space. You're doing everything green initiative and trying to push it. Now, can you highlight some of the defining moments of your career?
I've had quite a good number of defining moments. So those moments I felt like I've really hit the score. It's quite exciting to start up a factory from scratch. Like I mentioned that in Kibo, the investor placed his interest with the Kenya Investment Authority that he needed to set up a factory in Kenya. That's all he knew, and he had the funding. He had the business model, like this is exactly what he needed to assemble the motorbikes. So from there, they had to source for someone who pick up that concept from concept to the actual manufacturing to actualization. And so my recruiting agency reached out to me, having knowledge that I've done similar setups before for the other investors coming in. And I started Kibo from day one. So we identified where the factory can be located, all the way to designing what the factory should look like, and understanding the process that they need for their product. And we came up with all that from concept actually to designing, to setting up, all the way to developing the resources that you need to recruiting the team.
Okay.
And I think Kibo is up and running to date.
Okay.
That's my baby. So proud of it. And the same with the Opibus, which has transitioned to Rome. I set up the production factory for the electric motorbikes,
The EVs.
the EVs and the electric vehicles. It was taken up by Rome. They are doing super well. So when it comes to green energy, I transitioned from the fossil, those were Kibo motorbikes, to the electric motorbikes, which everyone is embracing in terms of reducing the carbon footprint, and also issues like when it comes to the Kenyan economy at this tough moment, everyone is trying to see where they can save a coin here and there.
An alternative, energy efficient way of, okay, cool.
And of course, a good contribution to having lesser carbon emissions to the environment. So in addition to that, the other defining moment, in manufacturing, you will always meet new challenges. So I've learned to, one of the biggest issues or one of the pollutants that we are having in the current environment that no one is really capturing is the noise aspect. And you find that organizations that are, or authorities that are in charge of curbing that are having fights with businesses. When the business person is trying to make their business thrive, like hotels, like clubs, and so many other studios that are within such residential areas, they are trying to thrive and make it. But again, no one has managed to address the pollution of noise. It's that unmentioned pollutant. So I started a company that is addressing that particular noise pollution issue.
All right.
Trying to market it. It's Profab Air Systems. So we are trying to work with the business people to curb that noise, so that you find that business like clubs can operate within the residential areas and not have issues with the people, so businesses can mix up. We don't have to have separate residential areas and industrial areas, because that's the reason why you find it that these commercial setups are not working in residential areas because of the requirements of the authorities. So that's one of the things I've done for a company that's operating in Ruiru, and they managed to have the operations running 24 hours in the residential areas within Ruiru.
Okay, all right. So my follow-up question would be, what is the gap that you have identified that necessitated you to bring this intervention of controlling noise pollution and ensuring it's not, these two ecosystems, people and the manufacturers, can coexist in the same place without there being any unnecessary interference? What is that gap that has not been addressed that you're seeking, or that you're now addressing?
The gap is the current requirement by the Kenyan authorities is that if you're running any commercial industry within residential areas, and that's the part of operations to have that manufacturing setup to run, causes disturbance to the environment. Disturbance can come in terms of noise. It can be in terms of emissions like dust, like particles emitting. So there's a gap in the Kenyan space. There's no skill that's available to make sure that the industries can thrive in the residential areas, unless it's a very quiet industry. But if the industry is creating any pollution, then that business never runs there. So one has to squeeze themselves within the expensive industrial segregated space. And currently the industrial segregated space is filling up and it's getting very costly. So we come in to allow those industries to operate in residential areas within the parameters of the authorities. So if the authorities require you to be within this, because there are set limits of noise, set limits of particle, of all those emissions.
There's a criteria.
There's a criteria and there's a schedule that you have to fill in. So we make sure that these factories can set up in these residential areas and meet the requirements of the authorities. So that's why we've come to fill the gap.
And let me ask you, are Kenyan themselves the ones we're seeking to protect from this type of pollution that is not so often talked about? Are they themselves aware of how it affects them?
They'll only be aware if they can see it. For example, if I'll give an example, Thika is an old industrial town.
Yes.
So if you see your iron sheets corroding, then you know there's some pollutants that is causing that. Or if you breathe in something and you cough out, that's the only way you know that you're breathing something that is not
amiss.
something is not clear with the air you're breathing in. That's the only way Kenya knows. So they're not Kenyans are not knowledgeable about these pollutions and what's happening within their neighborhood unless they can see a reaction to that pollution. Otherwise, it just remains business as usual, unfortunately.
I can only imagine. And speaking of business as usual, I know by now, I'm sure majority of Kenyans have heard about e-mobility. They've heard about the electric vehicles, be it the bikes, the cars and whatnot. Now, what would you say is the biggest hurdle when it comes to making the transition? Now, from your story, I've already collected that you are an ecosystem builder. Like, for instance, you did set up from end to end different manufacturing plants. Now, and you've done this in Kenya, you've done this for Rome, and you've done this in other West African countries. You've done this in Nigeria, right?
In Nigeria and in Malawi.
And in Malawi. So what are the different nuances that limit us from experiencing the full transition to a green efficient economy, to using green sources of energy?
Okay, the biggest challenge I've seen, the challenges differ in countries. But in this particular case, I'll speak about Kenya. So the biggest challenge when it comes to embracing green environment, reducing as I mentioned, reducing the carbon emissions and the carbon emissions, installing of the systems that emit less carbon is very expensive. For example, when you look at a very simple example, if I'm purchasing a compressor or even a generator, nowadays there are very efficient generators that have systems that filter the exhaust and make sure that you have minimal or nearly zero carbon emissions to the environment. But those generators are super expensive. So you kind of left to the option of taking the ones that are emitting higher emissions.
Yeah. Because they're affordable.
Because they are cheaper, they are affordable,
and
they are readily available. So the cost is one of the biggest aspects. Number two, we say, and the cost is also driven by duties. Because if the government was intending to have a cleaner and a greener environment, then at least less duty would be subdued to the ones that are emitting less carbon. So it starts with the authorities and then comes to the end user, to the consumer.
So at policy level.
At policy level.
And then we come to the people in business, the ones manufacturing and assembling.
And then the consumer.
The consumer.
So that's one, the cost aspect. Number two is knowledge. People are not knowledgeable. Because apparently when it comes to sustainability and green energy, it starts with me as an individual. So everyone has to understand they play a role in us having a greener and a cleaner future. So you as a person, as Barbara, I as Janet, we have to understand what is it that Janet is speaking about? What is it that I'm preaching? I'm preaching a greener tomorrow, a greener future. So what should I do? What am I required to do as a person? I should not use plastic drinking bottles. I should not throw litter all over the space. I should not use smoking like firewood and leave the smoke to go
using
all over,
energy-saving bulbs.
Using energy-saving bulbs. Everyone has an action item when it comes to whatever they're doing. So I believe there's a lot of awareness that needs to be created to the Kenyan society. There's a lot of input that we need to do from the organization like STEM. So when the youth are in college, I believe there need to be introduction of modules from the young age. Modules are introduced into schools so that the child embraces that from a very tender age. They understand that this is wrong, so they grow knowing that they have an impact when it comes to having a greener future.
It begins with you.
It begins with you.
Which makes me want to take you back. You had mentioned earlier, over time you were establishing an initiative from end to end, and you were involved even in the ops, things such as recruiting talent. Is there a gap when it comes to the talent that's in the market at the moment?
Yes. You find that, I'll give you a very good example. You find that in most of the organizations, when you join in, there is a staff handbook. The staff handbook will cover issues to do with the dressing code for some companies. They cover the reporting time. They cover the discipline or how you're supposed to carry yourself around the company. But no staff handbook will cover green or clean environment. So it means that there's a gap because it should be a clause that's covered within when a staff is joining the company.
It should be in the
Be
policy.
in the policy, such that they understand from the onset of the word go that the company promotes green environment. We are working towards a greener and more, maybe a brighter future, you know. But then if it's not, the companies do not embrace it, and it's not in that particular introduction document, even in the HR process for doing the company introduction, what do you call it, the walk tour, that one is done around the company.
Yeah.
Like
The onboarding.
the onboarding process, it's not there. When you go to the company, you don't find it like all over written that do not litter. You find that there are recycle bins where you segregate your litter. You know, that alone, you find most of the companies are not embracing.
Yeah.
So, as I mentioned, if this particular training or awareness is created from the basic primary young children, the initiative will be instilled in their minds from that young age. Then when they're growing up, it's quite easy for them to embrace. But then you cannot start training someone about green energy, sustainability, all these issues when someone is all grown.
It will be hard to carve.
It
will be hard to
an
carve
old
that
tree.
habit. Yeah.
It's like trying to carve an old tree.
Okay. All right. Now, when it comes to, I've seen very many guys online. Personally, my dream car is a very big SUV electric car that I currently cannot afford because it costs an arm and a leg. But
You will.
I was wondering now, in the future when I purchase my electric car, am I really gonna find sufficient charging ports? Like once I hit my 70 kilometers or my 120 or whichever mileage that car allows me to achieve, and let's say I get stuck in a place like Githunguri or in the middle of Thika, in Kenol, in between Muranga and Thika, am I gonna find, do I just walk into a random garage? Am I gonna find the right talent? Do we have shortage when it comes to that? Do we have enough skilled people such that, and when the government puts up the policy and when the manufacturers make these vehicles available, can we be able to purchase them? And when we do, can we be able to find people who are going to service these cars for us?
Okay, when it comes to the EV, electric vehicles, there is a huge gap.
I can imagine.
There is a huge gap, and the gap begins with you've purchased your dream vehicle, an electric vehicle. Now, in Kenya, the investors who have come in are assembling the vehicles. That is the vehicles and the motorbikes. But no one has come in strongly to create a network of the charging stations. So it means if you leave Nairobi with your vehicle that's supposed to cover 200 kilometers, the battery capacity is 200 kilometers when it's fully charged, and you're supposed to go to Nakuru, you need to charge somewhere along the way. The charging stations are not ordinary charging stations.
Okay.
They are special. There's a company that Uganda is doing way much better than Kenya.
They have the support infrastructure?
They have the support infrastructure within the petrol stations.
Oh, wow.
So the same point where you go carry out your fuel filling,
there
they
is
have the charging
option.
point. And
that's nice.
A company like Zembo, we are starting up a project with them in Uganda for building more networks for the charging stations.
Okay.
So in every point where there is a Shell, for example, a Shell petrol station, you find a charging point for your EV. And apparently, they are also moving towards standardizing the batteries, such that you don't need to go there and wait for 1 hour for your battery to charge. You just go and swap your battery. You drop your battery, pick one that's charged,
and then you can just carry on with the journey.
So apparently, the investors who are putting up the charging stations, the batteries belong to them. The battery does not belong to the owner of the vehicle. The battery belongs to the owner of the charging station.
Wow.
That way, they can easily swap.
Okay. And
so you don't have your own battery. The battery
how does that
to the
work?
Stations.
How does that work? If I purchase this battery, I think it should belong to me.
Now, it's the same ideology in some of the countries where this phone does not belong to you, but belongs to Safaricom.
Okay, all right.
So all you need is to fill the airtime to the phone.
Because everything else is already incorporated.
Everything else is already incorporated.
Okay.
And that way they're able to standardize the battery compartment, because if this the battery should go into
there's a
this
partial ownership element, which cuts the cost.
incurs the cost, but
Okay.
it's also a business to the battery charging station
Yeah.
investor.
Yeah.
Because apparently, when you charge that battery, you pay.
Yeah.
It's way cheaper than the fuel, than the diesel and the petrol.
Definitely.
You'll pay something smaller, but the battery belongs to them. What the reasons for battery belonging to them is for maintenance purpose.
I can imagine, yeah.
For maintenance purpose, because when it comes to the electric lithium-ion batteries, the biggest challenge is the life cycle of that battery. And the battery is quite expensive. So it makes sense if the owner of the charging stations takes up the battery ownership. That way
And
they can maintain
maintains
them
it.
the same way the gas cylinders.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
The
They
same way
don't
you do with the
belong
gas,
to us.
they
We
don't-
just
yeah, you just
refill
go,
it.
you could just refill it and swap, and then they maintain the gas cylinders, refill, and make sure that the cylinder is safe for release to the clients back.
Okay.
But you don't own a specific cylinder that's written, this is Janet's
Yeah.
cylinder.
I don't own this. It belongs to Haas. It belongs to
Yeah.
Afrigas and
Exactly.
whichever other brand.
It's exactly the same thing that
Okay,
Uganda
it's
is
the same
doing there.
model. All right.
So the biggest challenge when it comes to EV is the charging stations. In Kenya, you will get frustrated.
And what is the challenge? Why is it easier to do it in Uganda and it's not easier to replicate the same in Kenya? What's the challenge?
I think it's an aspect of investor and where the economy is more lenient. So in Uganda, businesses are thriving way much better, the same as in West Africa. So I think it's a big challenge that needs to be evaluated further. But the business trends seem to be doing better in Uganda.
Do we have more purchase of these EVs in Uganda vis-a-vis Kenya, according to
Yes.
statistics?
Especially when it comes to the border, it's nearly, they have a percentage.
Oh, wow.
They have
They moved from
whole-
the manual Black Mamba and now they're doing EVs?
Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely. And you look at most of the EV manufacturers like Ampersand, December,
Yeah.
most of all this, they're in Uganda, in Burundi.
Let me ask you, you've said that the reason as to why this EV bikes and cars are expensive is because of the battery component. Is it that we can't make that for ourselves in East Africa? Do we lack the materials, the expertise? What is the problem? Why can't we make this for ourselves?
Largely, in Africa, the EV technology is very new.
Okay.
It's quite new. So we don't have sufficient skill. That's one of the questions you asked me. What happens if your vehicle fails
Yeah.
and you're at Naivasha?
Do you sleep there?
The skill is not so much out here. And I recently realized that JQAT is offering a course in sustainable energy and EV. So the skill is coming.
But it has not been there.
It's not there because remember, there's what you learn in college,
Yeah.
and there's what you get out of experience.
Yeah.
So now the youths who have managed to take the training in colleges, that skill has not yet developed to a point that they can now embrace the market can entirely go on
Okay.
EV.
All right.
So that will take a while.
Okay. And what would you advise a student who would love to come and thrive in this area? We understand mechanical engineering is not what it used to be back in the day. It's a bit exciting. We're now dealing with electricity as a source of energy. What advice would you give to our students who are in STEM or who want to join STEM?
The industry is big. The market is huge. Everybody is coming to East Africa. I won't say specifically to Kenya, but to East Africa and to Africa. Reason being, the Western countries have developed when it comes to EV. To Africa, there is new technology, and everyone is embracing it. Why? Because fuel has become quite expensive. So it's an opportunity that this generation has to transition to EV because the technology is here. So if you took the training right now, in the next 5 years, that's going to be very marketable in the industry.
All right.
When being marketable is you can employ yourself, you can dive into the industry and work for someone, but there's a lot of available slots.
Okay. And if you, for a parting shot, if you could give us one mantra that you personally live by, what would that be?
Green energy, clean environment is an individual responsibility. Everyone has a part to play in it.
All right. Thank you so much. It's been lovely having this conversation with you. I'm looking forward to have you more and more so that we can dive deep into specific subjects.
It's my pleasure,
Thank you so
Barbara.
much.
Pleasure.
All right. And that has been it. Thank you so much. Tune in for the next episode. Bye.
Bye.